What's up guys, GrimXV here. In today's video we'll be covering everything we know about 1.1 so far, including the recently released devblog 29. If you like my content, be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out the timestamps below if you want to get straight to the juice. Now that that's out of the way, let's dive in. SOLS first announced the 1.1 update with devblog 27 on November 7th of 2024. The blog was titled Whispers of Darkness and featured quality of life additions, which were the Fusion Forge and the highly anticipated Arena system. The Fusion Forge is a new crafting station that will allow players to build their dream weapon or spell jewel by picking and combining their desired modifiers. Based on the screenshots shown here, you'll also be able to finally change the infusion on weapons, meaning soon our days of fruitless grinding will be long behind us. For the Arena system, well, it actually comes in two parts. The first being a free-form dueling system that'll allow you to fight players anywhere in the world. Simply drop down a new item called a duel flag, and the challenged player can interact with it to start the countdown. Once a player's HP reaches 0, the winner is announced and both players' HP bars are reset. While that portion of the system is seemingly strictly for 1v1 duels, the castle-housed Arena system is not. Players will be able to set up a new arena zone anywhere within their base plot via a new placeable arena tile. The blog also shows a new item to accompany this, which will be used to start contests with seemingly up to 4 different teams. Once the fight is over, rather than players immediately healing to full like the duel system, defeated players are instead placed into a down state or removed from the contest area until a winner has been decided. The blog goes on to mention a visual upgrade for artifact weapons and briefly touches on a new zone that'll be connected by Silverlight and Gloomrot North. Sadly, that's all we know about the new zone currently, but SOLS did confirm that it'll contain new base plots. If you thought blog 27 was a lot, then brace yourself for the recap on 28. SOLS dropped this blog on December 19th of 2024 and titled it Fueled by Blood. In this blog, they threw a ton of exciting changes at us. The blog starts by introducing stat caps that'll be a mixture of soft and hard cap limits. Now, if you're concerned, don't be, because they go on to say they've reworked gear, blood, potions, and passive tree bonuses to make it so you can accurately and easily plan how to cap the stats you want. True to the blog title, they next go on to cover all the changes coming to blood, which are on the screen now. In addition to this, they also announced that we'll be able to mix and match blood type bonuses via a new crafting station called the Blood Mixer. I'm gonna let that one sink in. That means we'll be able to mix warrior and scholar or any 2 blood types we want. That is insane. As for the rest of the blog, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but it goes on to highlight the new armor stat changes, new elixirs, and expand on how the Fusion Forge will play into the new stat caps. For those interested in the full read, be sure to check out the links in the description below. The last large takeaway we'll cover here is the changes to passives. In the current version of the game, the passives act similar to the research system, meaning you can unlock and gain access to everything by farming and spending the appropriate resource. Well, in 1.1, not only have all passives been reworked, but you'll now be limited to choosing only 5. So needless to say, this is going to make things a lot more interesting. And finally, we cover the hot topic of today, which is devblog number 29, Weapons of the Night. In this blog, SOLS announced the addition of 3 new weapons being added to the game, which are Claws, the Twinblade, and Daggers. Starting off with the Claws, we see an auto attack pattern featuring wide arcing swipes, which reach a combo maximum of 50% physical damage. Aside from looking awesome, every third auto will also inflict puncture up to a maximum of 3 stacks before inflicting the target with Rupture, which deals 75% damage to the target and 50% damage to all nearby enemies. The first weapon ability shown is called Lunge, which vaults your character towards your cursor, cleaving enemies for 100% physical damage and inflicting a stack of puncture. The second ability is called Skewering Leap. This one leaps you to the target location, dealing 100% physical damage, inflicting a puncture, and a 1-second end cap. You can also use it to bounce off enemies towards your aim direction. However, missing an enemy will cause you to stick to the ground for a short duration. Wow. Okay, so right away, I think this weapon is going to be really strong, especially when pairing it with any steroid ability like Power Surge or Blood Rage. The entire weapon seems centered around proccing Puncture and inflicting Rupture. So anyone that enjoys that up close, just kind of almost smotheringly aggressive playstyle is gonna want this thing on their bar. As far as weapon abilities, we don't know for sure which one of these is going to be the Q or E, but I think Skewering Leap has potential to be very strong. Not only are you getting mobility and damage from this thing, but based on the animation, it looks like it could potentially be in iframe. Maybe something similar in functionality to like the Greatsword E. But even if it's not, either way, I think this one will be a lot of fun. Next up, we have the Twinblade. Does this remind anyone else of Darth Maul? Starting off with autos, the weapon features wide arcing swipes that actually inflict damage twice on a single pass, up to a combo maximum of 80% physical damage. The first ability is called Javelin, which lets you toss your weapon out to a target location, dealing 125% physical damage, displacing enemies, and inflicting a 1.5 second fading snare. But that's not all. After 2 seconds, your weapon will recall, causing it to pierce, pull, and deal 80% physical damage to enemies in its path. And if you thought we were done, you're wrong. You can also recast the ability before the timer to dash towards your weapon, which will cancel the recall. The second ability is Sweeping Strike, which causes you to lunge forward, dealing 100% physical damage in a line, and launches enemies into the air in the opposite direction of your lunge. I think this weapon is insanely versatile. I don't really have a comment for the auto attacks just because I think it'll largely depend on how it feels when like doing dash auto cancellations and stuff like that. But for me, the star of the show is for sure just the weapon abilities. Javelin immediately reminds me of Jarvan from League, and I think it'll just be really strong, right? I mean, you have the ability to safely poke, chase, and even just potentially catch your opponent off guard, all from one ability cast. That is nuts. Sweeping Strike seems like a really solid defensive tool. It almost puts me in the mind of a less optimal Reaper Q, but I think depending on whether or not it falls on an E or Q ability, you could probably have some pretty nasty true combos with this. I will say, out of all the new weapons, I think this is the one I'm most excited for. Last but not least, we have Throwing Daggers. The auto for these feature a chamber system that allows you to throw up to 4 daggers, dealing 40% physical damage each, and recharges a dagger every second. Additionally, hitting an enemy or solid object with these will cause the daggers to fall to the ground around the target and persist for a while until you consume them with a weapon ability or they gradually dissipate. Speaking of weapon abilities, up first we have Rain of Daggers. This ability causes your character to leap into the air and throw out 4 daggers that deal 40% physical damage each and inflict a 2-second fading snare. Once in the ground, these daggers will also persist there for 8 seconds like the ones for your auto attack. The second ability is called Release Daggers. This inflicts a 1.5 second fading snare and recalls all grounded daggers to you, dealing 40% physical damage each. Each dagger returned this way also provides you with a chambered dagger for your autos and reduces the cooldown for the Rain of Daggers ability by 0.2 seconds. I think this is another really interesting one. Based on what we know so far, I think this will probably end up filling a mid-range role. But honestly, it might be a weapon that's just better off as a standalone. My opinion on that might change, but currently I can't really think of anything that would flow or pair nicely with this other than kind of like your standard get off me tools, like Reaper Q, Longbow Q, those kind of things. That said though, I think this is really cool, and it might even be strong in certain scenarios like raid defense. I'm just not sure how well it'll do in open world, especially when you consider how cat and mouse or like mobile open world PvP tends to be. So yeah, we'll see. The block goes on to introduce new consumables to the game, which are called weapon coatings. We don't get to see all the coatings in this blog, but the two featured are the Storm and Blood coatings. Each coating seems to cause your next auto attack to deal additional magic damage and inflict an effect appropriate for the spell school onto the target before going on a 15-second cooldown. Here's what SLS had to say about them. There will be a new weapon coating for each magic type, and you'll be able to coat individual weapons with these. These powerful on-hit attacks are one more method you can use to specialize your playstyle and even mix multiple coatings across multiple weapons to switch between them. Each one can only be activated every 15 seconds on a single weapon, but if you're switching between others, you can get it as often as once every 5 seconds. So if I'm understanding this correctly, this means that if I have a static infusion on my spear and a weaken infusion on my whip, then I could auto attack someone with a spear, inflict static, and then 5 seconds later be able to switch to my whip and inflict the weaken. If that's right, I think that these are going to be insanely strong. I mean, the fact that you can coat each weapon separately like that has some really crazy implications for potential abuse with weapons like Siren's Well. I'm sure they're watching them closely from a balance perspective, but it'll be interesting to see what the coatings for the other spell schools do. Of the two we can see, Blood, I think, actually looks the most insane. If anyone doesn't know, Vampire Curse is the same effect that gets applied on autos when you have the Dracula Shard. And it's pretty much a delayed damage tick that scales off your magic damage. So it's kind of like a magic version of a pop from Pistol E. It's really strong. Other than that, having a spawnable blood orb every 5 seconds also sounds nuts. This is probably going to be a coating that you want on at least one of your weapons at all times. And finally, SLS sums up the blog by revealing some of the previously mentioned cosmetic changes to the artifact weapons. Let me know in the comments below which ones are your favorite. I've got my eye on Mortira's Lament. And that's going to be it for today's video, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is GrimXV, signing off.